Hi there, in this video, which follows on from the last video, I'm going to be talking about grid with spans, grid areas, subgrids and nested grids. I introduced nested grids in the last video, but you probably need some more practice, so it's included in this video. So let's get started. If you watched the last video, you remember this slide. This is what we made in the last video. If you need to get the code, you can get it from the GitHub repository. In the description below there is a link to the GitHub repository, or you can get it by watching the last video and coding along, doing what I do to create it. Here we are in Visual Studio Code. I have my usual setup where I have three files, an index.html for the HTML, a styles.css for my CSS, and inside the index.html there is a link to the styles.css. Also there's a script.js for JavaScript, although as this is a video about CSS grid layouts, we probably won't need to touch the script.js. I also have the live server extension in Visual Studio Code so that I can have local server to view my web pages locally. I have the code for the grid layout created in the last video. I'd like to start by showing you how we can use spans in grids. With spans you specify how many grid lines the element spans, as opposed to what we did previously, which was specify the ending grid line. Let me show you by altering the code we already have. I'll go to the styles.css, and in the header, instead of 1 to 4, I'm going to do span 3 to span 3 grid lines, and in the grid row, instead of 2 to 4, I do span 2. And similarly here, span 2, because it spans 2 grid lines. And the footer, same as the header, so it's span 3 grid lines. And there you have it. We still have the same thing. Whether you use numbers of spans in setting up your grid rows and columns is purely a question of preference. Next, I want to show you grid areas. In grid areas you give names to the areas. For this example I will use the names header, nav, aside, main and footer, as it seems easiest to name the areas the same as the elements inside the grid. So now we need to implement this inside our code. So go back to content and inside here we do grid template areas, and then normally start on a new line, then quotes, and then the first line is header, then a space, header, header, because there's 3 of them, and then on the next line you do aside, main, main, nav, main, main, and then footer, footer, footer. Can you see that the grid areas creates a sort of map of the grid areas I created in the last slide? Here I have 3 header areas, an aside, and then 2 main areas, a nav, and another 2 main areas, and on the last line we have 3 footer areas. If I go to the slide, I have 3 header areas, an aside, 2 main areas on the next row, a nav on the next row, then 2 main areas, and on the last line I have 3 footer areas. It's the same. Then inside the header, instead of grid row and column, we have grid area is header, and inside aside, so grid row and column, we have grid area is aside. And the same for the nav. Grid area is nav. And the main grid area is main, and the footer grid area is footer. And we still have the same thing. How simple was that? Next, I want to try a more complicated example. I need to first create my grid lines on this. As you can see, this has a main grid and a number of subgrids. Note there is a cream left hand side. On the right hand side there are 3 cream sections. Each of these 3 sections has been given its own grid, as shown on the far right. I have not separated out the left sidebar because it is going to be implemented with subgrid, which will use the same grid lines as the left sidebar. The top right hand sidebar will be implemented with a nested grid that uses grid areas. Below the top right hand sidebar are another 2 sub sidebars. The left hand side of these 2 will be implemented with nested grid rows and grid columns. The last grid on the bottom right hand side will be implemented with nested grid and uses grid areas. But let's start off simple and concentrate on doing the large cream areas. And once that is done, we will do the subgrids and nested grids. I need to add some grid lines. Now let's implement this. So do .container. I'm going to do another class called corner for the rounded corners. And there's going to be the side, the left hand, aside dot, and that's going to have rounded corners as well. So corner dot left aside. Close this, that'd be easier. And then dot and aside corner dot RA top for the right side top. And then section dot corner dot rab left, rab for right hand side bottom, just an abbreviation. And then section dot corner dot rab right hand bottom right. Right, now go to the stars.css to implement that. We've already got the box sizing and margin and padding everywhere, denoted by the asterisks. And so next I'm going to do the corner, the dot corner class for the rounded corners, and then we do border none for no border, and border radius is 10 pixels. Next, implement container, display grid, background color is hash 540BOE and margin is 1.8 EM auto, and max width 900 px, and height is 900 px, and a gap of 1 EM, and then grid template columns, we have a small one, 1FR, repeat, 4, 3 FR, then 1 FR. And grid template rows is 1 FR, then repeat, 4, 3 FR, 1 FR. And we do the grid template areas, we have, when you want to put nothing in an area, you just put dots. So it's dot, 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 dot. So the first line will have nothing in it. And then on the next line, first space is nothing, and then left aside and left aside, then RA top, RA top, and nothing, then left aside, left aside, RA top, RA top, and then dot left aside, left aside, rab left, rab right, then dot. These need to have dots at the end as well. Dot, 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 should be a side, that's it, and then left aside, left aside, rab left and rab right, dot, at the bottom it's the same as this, so I copy that, right, and then to set the color we do left aside, comma, dot, rab top, comma, dot, rab right, and that's no, it should be dot rab left there, and then color is hash FFF3BO. So now we need to do grid areas. So dot left aside, grid area is left aside. This makes the element with the class left aside associate with the grid area left aside. Dot RA top is grid area array top, dot rab left is grid area rab left, dot rab right is grid area rab right. That's not quite right. It's because I've put rab top instead of RA top. That's it. Expand it. That's fine. So next I'll do the left hand sidebar. So it's card, card 1 and card 2. So inside the left aside I need to create 3 divs. So that's corner dot card, first one, dot corner dot card 1 for the second one, and dot corner dot card 2 for the third one. Put the corner in because we've got rounded corners, and then in the styles.css inside the left aside I need to create another grid. This is going to be a subgrid, but I'll give it grid for the display, and then grid template columns I'm going to put subgrid. So here's a slide showing the subgrid. The green lines represent the subgrid. So back in Visual Studio Code, the next thing to do is grid template areas. And then I do the top line is empty, so it's dot dot, and then the next line is card card, the next line is card 1 card 1, and the next line is card 2 card 2. And that's it. And next need to do dot card comma dot card 1 dot card 2, and background color is hash 9A 9E2 A2B, and margin is 1 EM. Margin top is 0. So next we need to position the grid areas. So dot card is grid area card, and then I'll copy this and then card 1 is grid area card 1, and card 2 is grid area card 2. And that's the left side done. So next I do the right hand side top. It has a large area and then 2 smaller ones below it. So go into index.html and inside RA top I'm going to do article dot corner dot article top, and then article dot corner dot article bottom, and then lastly it's article dot corner dot article dot bottom 2. This should be dash bottom 2. That's it. So inside styles.css, inside RA top, I'm going to do display grid, and then gap is 1 EM, and padding is 1 EM, and then grid template columns is 1 FR, 1 FR, and then grid template rows is 1 FR, 1 FR, and then grid template areas is article top, article top, and bottom article bottom, and article bottom 2. So go down the bottom here, dot article top, comma, dot article bottom, comma, dot article bottom 2, and then background color is #9E2 A2 9E2 A2B. And then dot article top is grid area article top, and then copy that, B, bottom Control V, Control D, bottom 2. And that's the right side top done. So next, do the right side bottom left. It has a large block, then a smaller one and a large one again. So go to index.html and inside here, right side bottom, do article dot corner dot article large, then article dot corner dot article small, and then article dot corner dot article large at the bottom. Then in the styles.css, inside .rab left, I do display grid, and then gap is 1 em, padding 1 em, and grid template columns is 1 fr, just one column, and grid template rows is 3, so that's 2 fr, a big one, 1 fr, a smaller one, and then a big one again. And here dot article large and dot article small. And that's the left side done. So next I just need to do the right side bottom right, which is just a double article, then 3 pairs of smaller articles below. So I'll go to index.html, and inside here do article dot corner dot article double, then article dot corner dot article tiny, article dot corner dot article tiny 2, and article dot corner dot article tiny b, and article dot corner dot article tiny 2b, and then article dot corner dot article tiny c, then article dot corner dot article dash tiny 2c, and go to the styles.css. So inside .rab right here, do display grid, and then gap is 0.5 em, and padding is 0.5 em, and grid template columns is 1fr, 1fr, grid template rows is repeat for 1fr. Then just here do dot article double and dot article tiny dot article tiny 2 dot article tiny b, and dot article tiny 2b, and dot article tiny c, and dot article dash tiny 2c. Give it the colors. Then at the bottom here, so dot article double is grid row 1, and grid column is 1, and it spans 2, and dot article tiny is grid row 2, dot article tiny 2, that's grid row 2 as well, then tiny b, grid row 3, and 2b called tiny row 3, article tiny c, grid row 4, and dot article tiny 2c is grid row 4 as well. That's it. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please subscribe for more.